essentially, I believe that the charismatic taboo that these substances have had since the 60s prohibition is slowly being lifted already, but that religions must take a forward seat in this process. And I don't by any means want to suggest that priests, imams, and rabbis and heads of temples should be giving out acid tabs as communion wafers. I mean, it's just, not only is it silly, it's dangerous. But I do think that this kind of excessively judgmental attitude, which many religions have towards intoxication, cannot stand when it comes to psychedelics, which is where religion and science meet here. And fundamentally, what we have in our society at the moment is this kind of this epistemic arrogance. We can explain everything. We can reduce everything and define everything, and everything is ultimately a result of physical laws, the physical laws of matter. It's almost like we're slightly stuck in a new enlightenment, and we're kind of heading into a new romantic era, kind of dawning slowly. And I think, essentially, that in order to counterbalance this epistemic arrogance, which of course is necessary, and in fact it is a large reason that I've been able to speak about the neurology of psychedelics, where I wouldn't have been able to, in the 60s or whatever. But religion isn't attracting people anymore, and one of religion's main aims, in my view, is to get people, well, as well as to make them feel safe and secure in their existential estrangement and whatever. It's basically to in a sense, make them less secure. It's to bring back mystery, bring back magic into the midst of our lives. And this return to magic is happening more and more as people start to use psychedelics to explore their own spirituality and their own place, their own context in this existence. We don't know where we're coming from, we don't know where we're going, but psychedelics can help give us a sense of, although we're small, we're not insignificant, especially in the context of entheogenesis, which by definition means, a religious reverence and a religious setting of some kind. Now, that's not the only right way. I mean, obviously people, many people, you read online of trip reports and things like that, but, and I'm not saying that's wrong or evil. In fact, I'm saying that, organised religion should start to see that as a way of people accessing this beginning and end, or this circle that we live in. So, a very interesting way of looking at this kind of phenomenon would be, it started with William James. He said that, these five senses and how we perceive the world is the filmiest of screens. And recently in an academic journal called Breaking Convention, I think the 2015 edition, Andrew Gallimore wrote an interesting essay kind of coming to philosophical, phenomenological conclusions about the neurology of the situation. And what he said was, so we, ever since we're children, we try to organise the brain into thalamocortical columns, responding to the world in a way which is most apt for survival of the fittest consciousness, basically. And it creates this problem-solving consciousness, this very astute, on the ball consciousness. But then when we take psychedelics, it muddles that up, and it means that our intrinsic information precluded in the brain organ rule our perceptions more. Nonetheless, we are still reacting to reality in a different way in that context. And the key thing that he argued was that fitness and access to truth are logically distinct properties, which, I mean, you can't really argue with that, right? It seems that the way we perceive the world is geared towards survival, and the way our society is structured is geared towards, working, continuing, moving forward. But that's not the only way to perceive the world, and debatably, by phenomenological extension, it's not the only world. because of the fact that fitness and access to truth are logically distinct. Of course, is deeply dangerous that we can't fall into the trap of is hailing these as some kind of panacea or some kind of solution to all life's ills, all personal ills, all social ills, because that is, if anything went wrong in the 60s, it was that. Timothy Leary abandoned the scientific method, told everyone to turn off, tune in, drop out, went off to New York and started the League for Spiritual Discovery, which, it's still alive today, and it's mostly focused on meditation now, which is good. But to hail this as the panacea, it adds such a snobbery. I've taken psychedelics, so I'm going to be enlightened. That's just, it's horrible. And there are all these sound bites on Facebook as well, like, people see, LSD, you become God, and all these. It's just horrible. There needs to be a balance. And there are obviously so many people as well with a temperament for psychoses who can't do this. And if you look at the Christian message, love the other, it's all about community. There are loads of spiritual avenues, and psychedelia are but one, in fact quite a shallow one in the grand scheme of things. As Alan Watts said, and I think his is the most nuanced view, because it balances what's come before with a kind of more religious, reverent attitude. There are microscopes, and a biologist doesn't sit with his eye glued to the microscope. He goes away and reflects on what he's seen. And meditation, fasting, all these things, so equally important, more important probably. But the charismatic taboo is being lifted, and I think that's a good thing.